And you are back on the Tortoise and Hare experience. We have a show.
We do have a show. We have an insane show today. I'm very excited about it.
Yes.
It's like a family show to me.
Well,
it's not to you because you have no family. Do people like you?
No, they don't.
I
I always say I should never be allowed to be amongst humans, you know?
Especially with this new persona that you have going on. This
you love it, right?
Yeah, it's like Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to it, I have to say. I'm not hating it.
Yeah, a lot of people are really enjoying it. I went to an open mic I always want to say the other day, but it's never the other day.
Right.
Here. I went there and everybody was just in awe of like my hair and stuff. And I'm like, I just woke up, this
is me.
Yeah, this is me.
It's just perfection.
Exactly. But do you ever have like a really good hair day and you're like, okay, I have to go out. I have to go do something with this hair, right?
And it doesn't happen often.
It doesn't.
Because this is 2 hours of straightening that I don't do by myself. I have, people for that.
Right.
But, because I have very curly hair and it's very 80s. And if that comes out good, then I'm so happy that I'm running the streets. Like, look at me, look at me.
Now, what's weird is when I take a shower, all this beauty goes away for some strange reason.
And that's why you don't shower?
Now I shower at night.
Say.
I'm like changing my shower. Like I just literally walked out of bed, came here. My shirt's dirty.
Oh,
I mean, I don't even put deodorant on unless I go to work. Unless someone pays me, I'm like, okay, I'll put on deodorant.
Do you know how bad deodorant is for you? It's such a bad thing.
Really?
Yeah, because first off, that's your skin is the biggest organ that you have, and your lymph glands
speak
are
for yourself.
right there. Well, that's
right.
But your lymph glands are underneath your arms, and when you're putting on a chemical directly into that area, it's going to infect you.
Okay.
Or affect you.
Affect you. I like that better.
Yeah, it will. So you should, there are things on the market that are natural that you should be using.
I'm just using my natural...
the crystal little rock.
I'm just using my natural musk.
And that's offensive. That's especially offensive to me.
Well, because you're not attracted to the musk. My musk.
Attracted to anything, but it's good.
So, in every show we started off with an experience.
We do.
I want to go first for my experience, and that was we're trying something new out here on the show, which is before the way we were shooting it, I was going crazy. I was just with all the light, we could never really see the guest, and we did that for like 60 times.
I know.
But hey, you have to evolve, right?
Eventually we look at our own stuff and go, oh, maybe we should relight it.
Yeah. And then we tried relighting it. We tried dude, we tried so much, just to fix it from that angle that we didn't think about shooting from another angle.
Yeah.
So I was really excited because we talked about this after our last show, and because I was just really frustrated. And so today we're trying something new out, something different that we're, I guess we're going to get used to. But, with anything new, we're going to come up with snags along the way. And so we're still trying to figure things out. But and I'm going to ask this of our guest who can we introduce our guest real quick?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Introduce.
Well, I mean, he's your friend. I mean, I just met him.
Well, he's more than a friend.
Oh, really?
This is my family. Okay. This is my blood over here. This is Edward Nyahay, the great, the infamous, the dark.
The dark.
Thank you. Yes, I am pretty dark.
You are quite dark.
Some things.
Yeah. But I was going to ask, you, Edward, have you ever done something for the first time and it turned out right?
Something for the first time? Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. Actually, a couple years ago, I directed my first play, and that turned out pretty damn good.
Okay.
I was very excited about that. And then last year, I did even a darker play, and that turned out even pretty good, too. So, yeah, but it's like I had to rely on a lot of different people to come to make sure that, things were, up to par. And you have to rely on certain people, I think, if you're doing something new and experimenting like that.
Cool. Max, have you ever done something for the first time and it came out right?
Yeah, especially in the kitchen, because we are in the kitchen right now.
Literally.
And so when I'm making a new recipe and I try it for the first time and it happens, I'm like, yeah, this is the coolest thing ever. And then I'll never remember how I did it the first time, and it goes away.
Yeah.
Especially making food for my daughter, who's a very picky eater.
Is picky.
You're throwing things together and you find that magic potion that she likes, but then how do you recreate that?
And then you're like, oh, what did she like that time? And never happens again, which is why both of our daughters are skin and bones.
Yes.
do both of your daughters play with each other or anything? I mean,
no, well,
is that weird? Is that a weird?
Danny's 25.
Mine's 16.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know your daughter.
They know each other, though.
Yeah,
that's cool. That's very cool. So that was my experience. Max, what's been your experience?
Well, there's been a lot going on, and a lot happening in our world. And we'll talk about our world in a minute, but in my own personal world, I lost Hugh Hefner, and that was a pretty major thing for me.
I mean, did we really lose Hugh Hefner?
Well, I lost him in my everyday life. It's hard because, I'd known him since, how old was I? 16, 17 when I first...
He was like 80.
Well, he's always been 80.
I know. He's always been...
I never knew him as anything more than or less than 80. He's always been just 80.
Yeah.
But brilliant man who, changed our world and how we looked at women and,
literally, figuratively.
Yes, literature in all. And it's a hard loss for everybody at Playboy. So my heart is with everybody, at Playboy Enterprises and the family and Morgan and the boys and Kim and Crystal and all of them. Yeah, so that's been my experience, my bunny world.
Okay, so Edward, we both shared some experiences that are going on. What's an experience you'd like to share?
But if you want to piggyback off that, my wife also is was heavily influenced by him as well. She got into erotic film acting and stuff like that. She, I know there's like a lot of things that, she's done that sort of, helped shape who she was. And then I worked for writer-director Zalman King. And I think that also, I've always been in that world, since college. I came out of, graduated from UMass Boston. I came out here to venture into the world of Hollywood. And that's where I seem to fall and land. Not that I really expected that to happen, but it just seems like everybody in my world was that. And the funny thing is, I grew up, sort of cradle Catholic, and you would think that those worlds oppose each other. And I guess maybe they do, they don't. I don't know. I just look at life.
On Sundays, they do.
Yeah. But it seems like, I don't know. That was a big impact, I think, on my wife as well, because, he was one of the first people to help her branch out into that world. And then obviously knowing Max for as many years as I have, and her being my sister's closest friend, she was always there, and so I don't know. It was interesting to see how my life sort of fell into this sort of realm of the erotic side of Hollywood.
It's not a bad side to be.
No, it's not a bad side at all.
It's not an easy side, that's for sure. It's definitely not easy, but I think that. Jackie and everybody that we're involved with has done it in a very classy way.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you have to, I think, find that artistic side. And there's a lot of things that I think people will deal with, but I think if you don't create that artistic venture and it's not something that really, if you're just doing it just to do it and you're doing it for the money or whatever, then that's one thing.
Right.
But I think when you have an artistic vision and you have something you need to say and you have certain ways of expressing yourself, and I think that does bring joy and happiness to a lot of people, and then you can overcome the person, and then it's not a lustful thing. It's more of an artistic appreciation, for the body and for how you can, express yourself, or how you sort of pose yourself, or how you work with light or work with different objects. Then all of a sudden the mind goes to a different place.
Yeah, I think that, with anything that you do in your life, when you're expressing yourself, like with your music, the church definitely didn't stand behind your music because, it's very dark, it's very heavy, but the message is so beautiful. And if they were to shut off that side, of the fear of the dramatic, and they actually listened to what it was about, they would be in support of it.
Well, I appreciate that. I've always felt like, I'm like a walking dichotomy, because I grew up on Ozzy, grew up on Marilyn Manson. Those were my influences. King Diamond, Support, Turnus, that will never change. Cradle of Filth. These are the people that I love. These are the people that I could fall asleep to listening to. And those are the people that influence me. But at the same time, as I mentioned, I grew up in a Catholic. I even now am going to daily church, and I'm constantly in prayer. I'm constantly praying the rosary and all these things. But there is that message that I will never not, live for God. But I also feel like, within my music, I'm sort of that person that sort of like reaches down into hell and pulls souls out for Christ, and that's my thing. And I will surround myself in the utter darkness because I know there is light in me, and I know that I can shine light in these places that maybe other people can't get to.
Yeah, I remember when you were a kid and walking into your bedroom with all the posters up on the wall, and your mother screaming, "He's going to hell!"
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I think you can go to hell for listening to music. You know what I mean? I think that's kind of a.
But that's the way the churches,
that's why
definitely thought, that if you listened to anything that wasn't exactly what they deemed appropriate, then you were going to hell. I've gone to hell 400 probably since 9 a.m. But
you're so it's okay. Over hell. Like, oh, help, whatever.
I'm over hell. I'm just a floater. I'm just, I do things in the proper way and I treat people a certain way, and that should amount to something.
I was I heard this great theory, and I'm a true supporter of it. And I'm gonna ask you about. I never really talk about this stuff, but I was like, well, I have you here, and so let me pick your brain. And now I'm not a religious person at all. As a matter of fact, I'm not even religious. But this theory came where they told me, they're like, heaven and hell is the same place, because everybody thinks like when you go to hell, there's fire, there's brimstone, there's what I mean, like it's really an awful place. But it made sense because one man's heaven is another man's hell. Like let's say for me, what you would think would be heaven for me is me at a Dodger, my spirit at a Dodger game, and the Dodgers always win. But to me, that would be hell because I already know that they're gonna win. So I'm just like this this would bore me. But somebody else might love it. So I was just wanting to pick your brain about that.
I think
I thought that was an interesting just point of view, way to look at things.
I think like the biggest thing that I look at when you're trying to describe heaven or hell is maybe the knowledge of the beatific vision, which is the knowledge of the understanding that there is a God, there is a creator, and then hell, I guess, would be the absence of that God, so knowing that there is this amazing, beautiful thing that is created and is love, and you're given a glimpse of that at maybe your death or your judgment, and you see that and you feel that and you know it, and now you can't have it, and then that's hell. You know what I mean? So to me, like I've always felt like instead of it being this brimstone fire kind of place, it's almost the absence of knowing of there is this eternal life for us, and to not be able to have that, I think is our own personal hell. It's almost like that movie where Dreams May Come. where his wife was sort of stuck in that environment and she didn't know how to get out. And it's like, or all these movies that keep playing with, the idea of you're living the same day every day over and over and over, sort of like what you just said, you know what I mean? And that becomes people's private hell, you know what I mean? So I think a lot, maybe deals with that, not just so much the religious aspect, but just knowing that, we could have something, the soul, gravitates towards these things because that's how we're all made up. We're made up to have these connections, and then you're cut off from that, and then when you're cut off from that, how does that make you feel? That's where my music comes from. You know what I mean? Is feeling that rage, feeling that frustration, and that sense of, God, where do I go from here? You know what I mean? And I mean, how many times do we walk around, just like one step away from jumping off a bridge? I mean, to me, it's constantly there. It's always gnawing at me. You know what I mean? Because it's always this constant battle that you have to try to fight. But how do you even explain that? Is that religious? I don't know. You know what I mean? Is it just human?
It's a human thing, I think.
But maybe, it's just the interpretation or how we learn to try to express ourselves, that, I've done with my music, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And with your films as well.
Yeah, my films. Yeah, for sure. All of my films sort of deal with this whole, thing of, I've created a genre because, after listening to all this kind of music and after, watching horror films and everything like that, there wasn't anything that really I felt I belonged to. So then I combine these two worlds, Gothic, which obviously is heavy Gothic influence, and then Catholicism, which I grew up with. So I created this genre called Gothlic, Gotholic, that combines these worlds together. And everything I do, I consider Gothic, whether it's my films or whether it's my music, it's this genre that I've created. So it can have this sort of like walking dichotomy of the dark and the light all happening at the exact same time. So I really believe you can't have one without the other. It's impossible. It's impossible to have utter darkness without having that light, shining forth and vice versa.
The yin to the yang.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why I do horror films, because in my everyday life, I do holistic medicine and, everything is positive and moving forward and, floating free. And then I go on set and I kill people.
Yeah, but that's just playtime. That's just, you know what I mean? That's just, you're not doing it like for real. But
there is a part of you, as you're having a fight scene and, which I have a lot of, there's a part of you that gets attached to that. And for a lot of the actors who, are, stuck on, they have to become that character all throughout, their filming, it can mess with your mind,
Yeah, I mean, I think also like with acting, I mean, you have to be able to connect, and so there has to be some side or, if you're able to create these kind of characters, yes, that's all within us. Yeah. And I think the beauty of acting is being able to sort of tap into that and leaving it there, leaving it on set, leaving it on camera and, walking away saying, okay.
But if you're a method actor, then you stay in that character the entire run of the film, and a lot of actors do that, and it can be very difficult.
Yeah, I also have my own philosophy on why somebody, method acting to me is almost like there's no reason, as far as I'm concerned. And I've been doing this, been SAG since '97 and directing a lot of things. And for method actors, and I know there's a lot of even famous people that consider themselves a method actor, but I also know with human nature, you can step in, step out of something. It's not impossible. And I don't know if it's, something where, they just have to feel like call themselves a method actor and then live this way. But you know what? Living that way can also get you in trouble in real life when the camera's not rolling, So I think people also need to be aware of that. And, and I don't know if it's ego, but I'm almost willing to bet that there's a little bit of ego there.
I think so too.
Whatever it is,
I think you're right.
Whatever it is that takes you to that point in your performance where you're, giving everything that you can give. When I was doing House of Manson, there was one of the actresses who was, she was attacking me, so we were having lunch and I'm like, hey, how are you? And I having the conversation and she's just like staring at me. I'm like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm in character. I'm like, All right.
Well, is your character hungry? Does your character want a Brussels sprout?
Lighten up, She's like, I have to kill you in 3 minutes. I'm like, all right.
Well, do I still have time for this spritzer? I mean, okay.
Got a carrot hanging in my mouth.
Since you brought up Manson, you have a song called Marilyn Manson.
Yes.
Just real quick, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing obviously comes down to Brian Warner and his influence with obviously Charles Manson and Marilyn Monroe. But in '94, when he first came out with Portrait of an American Family, I had my sister's friend introduced me to his music, and I was up in Boston. And I saw him for the first time at the Middle East, and it was quite the experience because I got to go hang out with the band after the Holiday Inn, and at the time, I got to be honest, when I bought the album, bought the CD, and I was really starting to get into him, I didn't know, is this real? Is this not real? Is this a gimmick? Is this not?
Right.
You're trying to figure it out, and then he sat there the whole entire time, and for some reason. He didn't smoke. There were obviously big joints going around. I sat next to Twiggy on a bed. And it was freaking awesome, and then all the guys were there, and then the two other bands were there. But meanwhile, Marilyn just sat there, laid there on the bed. He had the Bible in his hand. He had his red sunglasses on, and he held a bottle of Jack Daniels the whole time. He never took one sip of that Jack Daniels, but he passed it around to everybody. He never smoked. He never did any of the drugs. He was completely sober-minded. When he was there, and then the conversations that we were all getting into were about the Bible and about Christ and about God. And every time somebody would bring up, a point about Jesus or about God, he would bring up the anti-version of that and did it in a very intelligent way. And I was just like, oh man, okay, maybe there's something here. You know what I mean? That was a little sort of scary that. Was beyond just
Antichrist.
just beyond the a gimmick. What I mean?
Exciting. I'd be excited. Like really? Oh.
But the cool thing was that evening, he kicked everybody out. It was probably like 4 or 5 in the morning. Kicked everybody out, but he let me stay. So it was the band of Marilyn Manson. It was me and these 2 chicks that he let stay. And then I'm thinking, okay. Man, I had just saw him pulled Twiggy's pants down on stage. I just saw him start, whacking him off and like, Lord, what is going to happen? And I'm thinking because again, I was a little crazy in my mind, but I hadn't done things like that before. And I'm thinking, how do I get out of this situation if it goes there tonight? But thank God it never did. You know what I mean? And again, it was just, he was completely classy and just an amazing person. It made me even love him more. After that night. And then eventually it was like 6 in the morning. He's like, Ed, we got to get up, at 11. So you got to go, So then I left or whatever, but that changed my life. The next day in class, I wore his t-shirt. It said, I'm got a fuck on the back of it. Nobody had heard of Marilyn Manson, and then I literally, that was the end of it. I brought Marilyn to everybody that I knew, at that point. And then all these years, as his character got progressively worse, you know what I mean? And gone from just sort of crazy to darker and darker. And then the self-proclaimed Antichrist and all this stuff, I started to pray for him, you know what I mean? Because I had that personal connection. And then one day when I was working for Zalman King, he had called the office and he wanted Zalman King to direct a music video for Beautiful People with extreme sports versus extreme music for Universal. And Zalman chose not to do it because he was in the middle of a project or whatever. But, he invited him to the 97 MTV Music Awards where he did Dope Show. So I got to go and I went in Zalman's place to go hang out with him. And I brought my wife, Jackie, and the other secretary for Zalman's. But so there's been, Marilyn's always come back into my life. So obviously I wrote the song, just from, sort of a fan's point of view, but a God-fearing fan's point of view. And I think my point lyrically to him is, hey, God loves you, and that's that, you know what I mean? God loves everybody.
I know you're influenced by like all these like gothic type bands like Skinny Puppy and everything like that. But, I was reading your bio and your daughter showed you like Taylor Swift and everything, which I like. I'm a Swiftie. I'm a Swiftie too. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? When you were able to look at at her and her music. Tell me, like, were you really looking at it objectively, or were you like, why should I like this?
No, I mean, obviously, okay. The first song, I just want to put this out for the record. The first song my daughter did love when she was 7 years old was "Crazy Train" by Ozzy. Okay,
that's a good
Randy,
song.
yeah.
Good song.
And then it changed after that. After all that, it changed, and she obviously got heavy into Taylor Swift, heavy into Selena Gomez, heavy into Demi Lovato, Justin Bieber. You know what I mean? So, as someone who appreciated music, and I wanted to be able to see what she saw in these musicians. So I would just listen to them over and over and over, as I would do in my next Ozzy album, the next Marilyn album, the next Support Turnus album. You mentioned Skinny Puppy. I have a lot of stories about that and seances and stuff. I did with that. But anyway, there was I would listen to them in. Not that I didn't appreciate that kind of radio pop music. I did, but it just wasn't something I would just find myself putting on, listening to as a pure enjoyment. But now I had a reason to, you know what I mean? Of course, you want to be there for your daughter. You want to share these experiences, with them. And so when they're talking about a certain song or whatever, you want to, at least be able to have a conversation with her about it. You know what I mean? And try to relate it on a certain level. And then I think for a while there, it sort of lightened me up a little bit. My music even got a little lighter there. It's like, whoa, because I was being influenced by that kind of music. But yeah, I mean, but I think, one of the things also, one of the musicians I really loved that she loved was Demi Lovato, but she had a dark past too, and there was a lot of darkness, I think, within her that she was sort of trying to fight and battle. And it came out maybe in more of an aggressive way in her attitude in the music. So I would try to help. I even wrote a song, Demi Lovato, you know what I mean? Because I felt somebody that I could relate to musically on that level, and have something to sing about, because I do get aggressive in my vocals and stuff, and I need to be able to feel that in order for me to go there. I can't just make that stuff up. You know what I mean? But I think, she did help me maybe open up my mind a little bit, and enlightened me a little bit. You know what I mean? But it's not like I've gone out and bought the latest Justin Bieber album or something,
Tell the truth.
It's funny. I was, I listen to a lot of music, and I do it mainly on YouTube, but I'm always curious about other interpretations of music, or just how an artist reinterprets a song. And of course, I'm obsessed with Blank Space by Taylor Swift, and as I was thumbing through, she did a show for like the Grammys or something, but it wasn't like on TV or anything. It was just like a showcase for like a bunch of like producers and stuff like that. And so as I was watching it, she started talking about Blank Space, and she started saying how the reason why she wrote it was because she was reading a bunch of articles about herself, and she saw the way that she was being portrayed, and she was just like, she really fell in love with the idea of her like really jet setting around the world to be with boys and like doing all this stuff. And so she's like, that's why I wrote the song, because she got influenced by people's perception of her, and that's how that song came about. And I was wondering, is that something that's ever happened to you, where someone perceives you in one way, and then you start thinking, well, am I that way, or maybe I'm not, then you just get into like this weird writing like sesh or something?
I mean, I think to compare myself to Taylor Swift,
that's just I'm not comparing,
but I'm not that. I'm not that out there to where, you know what I mean, I could have a lot of different fans coming. So, I mean, if that happened, maybe it would happen somebody within my inner family or inner, circle of friends or whatever. But I would say I know what I'm doing when I create a certain visual or create a certain song or create certain imagery, create my movies. I know the places that I go to, and I go to very dark places within my own soul. I go to places that only I feel like I'm there, and I don't know how to get out. So I need my art to get me out. I had written a book, Wings of Flesh. It's actually going to be, it's in the beginning stages of getting financed now. And that was the same thing. I would write and I would see how dark can I go and how do I get myself out? So I think the perception when people look at that, you know what I mean? And they say, I've gotten a lot of, yeah, you portray this, but then you say you're this. So, you're full of shit and that's that. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah, I have gotten a lot of that. And that's hard to because, I've never done anything without sincerity. You know what I mean? No matter what it is. I was a teacher for 14 years. Kids will call you on your BS, man. You know what I mean? You cannot BS. So if I didn't know something, I would just admit it. You know what I'm saying? But I think maybe sometimes I would get that also from parents of students. You know what I mean? That were maybe checking me out online or whatever, and saying, okay, who's teaching my son here? But then in the classroom, I'm looking with the shirt and the tie or whatever, So I don't match that image. But then why am I so comfortable in that dark world? And I think I got a lot of that, but it was almost from people that I knew, and it wasn't from fans. You know what I mean? And it was people trying to figure me out, and once people get to know me, then they get it and they see me, who I am, and they see the sincerity and they see my love and my passion that I have for people, and I have never intentionally ever tried to hurt anybody in this world. That is not who I am.
What about spiders and cockroaches?
I do hate cockroaches, especially growing up in Florida. But I don't know. I just feel like me personally, people may not get that, and then I know I get judged a lot. You know what I mean? But then you just, at the end of the day, you got to toss it up and be like, okay, whatever. That's who I am. I know I put that out there, but I put that out there for my own survival. You know what I mean? So I can get up the next day and be a good father and be a good mentor and be, whatever it is that I'm doing that day, the best that I possibly can, But there's also a lot of crap I have to deal with, So I deal with it artistically.
Now, this is weird. I know that Max coached you on singing. Right now, I'm playing my guitar. I'm going. I found this open mic place, and I'm working on my comedy there. But at the same time, it made me say, well, you know what? I play guitar. I want, not that I want to sing or anything, but I'm like, well, let me. It's making me want to learn songs and stuff like that. And the thing I guess that I'm trying to say is finding your own voice, because Max can teach you, but it really comes down to what is your own voice and what you're comfortable with. Did that take a long time for you to find that, or are you still finding that?
No, I mean, I think I'm at the point now where I found it. I think it took many, many years to do it. Yeah. So when I first got into or decided this is what I want to do, it was back in, I think it was '99. I was at a party and this guy named Steve Council was there, and he was this English rock star looking guy, and he's like, hey, you look like a bloody rock star. Can you sing? And I'm like, I don't know. I sing in the shower, dude. I sang in fourth grade, and and then I was in the choir in fourth grade. And I was going to be accepted into this group that would have traveled the world, but I was going through friggin' puberty, and my voice cracked on the audition, and I wasn't accepted. So literally, if there's ever a moment in my life that I was upset with God and been like, okay, God, whatever, it was during that time, and then I sort of gave up on it. But then that guy, that one time at that party, inspired something in me. And then we put our first, 5 demos together. And then that was when I had gone to you, Max, and and she was teaching me how to sing, and from the diaphragm, and threw me on the floor, and made me, breathe in and get the air down and feel it in that lower back, and then how do you bring up the air from your stomach muscles, and and all of that goes into singing from your diaphragm, and not, having, I think the hardest part when I learned to learn how to sing was, when you have, notes that go higher or lower or whatever, you're still singing straight out in a straight line, and it's using your mouth and using, your throat and everything else that's, the muscles are pushing up this air, you know what I'm saying? And then you're forming your notes with your lips and stuff. And that's hard to understand. You know what I mean? Like
it is hard to understand. It's hard for a coach to get that through because, I'm not just a, voice teacher. I can teach you scales and all of that, and I could teach you music theory and all of those things, but I would rather coach you into taking what it is that you love and your particular voice. I didn't want to change his voice because he had his own style.
Right.
And I knew that there wasn't going to be any changing that. I can't turn him into a Demi Lovato. That's impossible.
If you could, let me know.
What I can do is teach him how to sing properly so that you can do a show and, you can do a tour and you can record and have it sound, correct, know, and it's a difficult thing to do and get it across to where people are understanding what you're talking about. Without it being like, oh, that's too much. That's too much music for me.
And I think, another big influence was Kelly Rhodes. I'm very close with the Rhodes family. I think one of the greatest moments of my life was when I was working for Zalman King. These two writers came in from from Miramax, I'm sorry. And they left Miramax to work for Zalman King, and they said Zalman was even a lot more wholesome than Miramax was a subdivision of Disney, if you can believe that or not.
Yeah.
But anyway, these writers, one of the writers was a friend of Dolores Rhodes at the church in Burbank that they had gone to. It was, I believe, a Lutheran church. And he's like, everybody that ever met me knew I loved Ozzy. And they're like, oh, if you like Ozzy, I'm sure you like Randy. I'm like, yeah, of course we love Randy. So they invited me to a Sunday mass over there, and I got to meet Dolores. And after the church service, we sat down at a potluck lunch, and I'm sitting next to Dolores as I'm sitting next to you. And she just started telling me about her son and how he met Ozzy. And I mean, that literally just blew my mind. So I purposely kept in touch with the Rhodes family all those years later. And then I would go to Randy's memorial out in San Bernardino, cemetery. And then in 2006, I started taking vocal lessons with Kelly Rhodes and then was with him for 3 years. But the first thing he said to me is, you always have to sound like Ozzy? I mean, and then another thing he would say, do you always have to sing about Jesus?
I mean, you don't. I mean, you don't have to.
But, those are the things that I, grew up on. You know what I mean? So it was a combination of those. But I think, the things with finding that master voice, for me, which is a lot different from, other vocalists or whatever, but, it's like to get that feeling across, so it's like, how can you do something like this? I don't know, but what are you going to do? These are my ways of speaking or performing or expressing myself. So just, how do you do all that shit? I don't know. You know what I mean? You learn to go to these weird places and instantly be able to get in and out. And that's what I was talking about, like method acting. If you're trained enough, you can transform yourself and do your job and get out and become the normal person that you are.
Which is so different than,
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to listen to one more song.
We should do a Red Shoe King because we've been talking about Zalman so much.
Okay. Okay, let's real quick talk about Red Shoe King, and then we're going to play that song, okay?
Yeah, so the beginning of the song, my wife, was an actress for Zalman King, so you'll hear clips from her from a place called Truth. Zalman was my mentor. I love that man. He was like my father figure out here. He taught me everything behind the camera, in front of the camera. And then when I went into education for 14 years all around the country, I created a film program that became the top film programs in the country. I got more kids into USC Film School, NYU Film School, Dodge Chapman Film School. I even had Michael Bugh, who's executive producer of La La Land. I was teaching his son, tell me, I went to a high school that was created for filmmaking to get people, and though that school never touched your numbers, and I give all of this credit to Mr. Zalman King because he was everything. He was, and he would force me to do everything. And I'll never forget this one time. He's like, I kept saying, Zalman, put me in your shows. And he's like, Ed, what's your favorite James Dean film? And I just sat there with the blank stare. I hadn't seen one James Dean film. And he's like, you call yourself an actor and you've never seen a James Dean film? So obviously that weekend I rented all 3. And then, but it was like just little moments like that. Or if I can say this with
no, you can't.
With 9.5 weeks, with Mickey Rourke,
yeah,
he hand fed him every single line. Every line. I didn't know that. He showed me how he did it. He reenacted it for me, and then he did that with me. You know what I mean? And he would say, okay, Ed, say the line, what are you doing? Just like that. And I'd be like, what are you doing? I said, no, I didn't say, what are you doing? I said, what are you doing? And he would make sure that everything he did, that, so every word that came out of Mickey Rourke's mouth in 9.5 weeks, Zalman King showed him and made him do every single thing. And then it was from that he was able to become this amazing actor after that. You know what I mean? But yeah, I owe my life to him. And when he passed away in 2011, my friend called me and I was in the classroom and I just literally just busted crying in front of all my students. And I was at an all-boys Catholic high school, so you imagine, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world. But that was horrible. And the funny thing was, a week before he had passed, we had his name of his company was called 10DB Incorporated, and we had a reunion a week before, and all of us got together, at the little local bar. Awesome. But he didn't show, but his producer showed, and but they didn't even tell us he was sick. No
one wants to know those things. You know what I mean?
But it would have, it was sad. So of course, I had to write the song Red Shoe King. And it's just about, of how he directed and how he lived his life and how he created worlds and how he could bring anybody into those worlds and make you something. And he saw potential in people. And it didn't matter. I've even heard stories where people came in auditions with friends and they said no to the actor. And he took the friend because he liked the way he looked and was able to direct that person and would star him in films after that. Those are all real stories with Zalman King. He was just an amazing, amazing human being.
Oh man, what an experience it has been. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Ed. Edward.
Awesome.
Edward.
It's Ed.
Is it Ed?
Yeah, it's Ed.
Eddie.
Yeah. If you call me Eddie, you've known me from the past. When growing up in the family. If you call me Ed, it was like the college years and Zalman years, and then Edward came out later.
I call him Eddie.
It's weird because I love that you could be comfortable with those different morphications, I guess, of your name. I'm kind of like a purist when it comes to like my real name. It's Albert. Everybody knows that, or if they don't, well, whatever. But and some people are like, oh, I want to call you Albie, or I want to call you Al, and I'm like, no, it's Albert. That is my name. I'm like, you can call me Turtle, but like only if I'm recording. You know what I mean, or only if I'm doing this or that.
Yeah, to me it doesn't. Whatever people want to call me.
That's cool.
I've been called Jackass and everything.
Are you like that with your name, Max?
I am, because Max is my middle name and it's Maxine.
Michelle, right?
Michel is my first name, Michel, and nobody can pronounce it, so I use Max.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I thought that was all amazing how liberal you are with your name. So I wish I could be like that, but I'm not. I'm very
very uptight.
I am. I'm like, well, this is what I'm. I don't know.
That's gotta be this way.
Yeah.
Well, the worst is like when I'm in public, because this has happened many times. I'm at Target or wherever, and then I hear Mr. Nyahay. I'm like, ah. Then the hair dries. Comes up on the back of my neck. I know it's a student. Yeah. And I'm like, shit. I'm all freaking. I have like 100 hours of tattoo work. That's usually when I have it all coming out. I'm in my flip flops. You know what I mean? So yeah. Mr. Nyahay is the one maybe I don't get used to out in public.
Right. Well, you can catch Mr. Nyahay on Reverb Nation on the Twitters and stuff. We're gonna have all those links on the show notes. So go check it out there on entertheshell.com.